Moving on from there, let's talk about our presidente, El President Biden. As you know, Nigerians, we like to call him President Bidemi, Oluwa Joseph Bidemi. I haven't called him that in a minute. So Oluwa Joseph Bidemi is trying to be the anti-truster in chief. My guy says, I am not playing with you guys no more. I am not playing these games of you guys being monopolies. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Apple. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Google. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Amazon. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Facebook. All you guys that are monopolies, I'm coming for you. I am coming and I'm doing everything that I can, even though I can't really do much of anything, but I'm still doing something to make sure that I can break up these companies. On Friday, President Biden signed various executive orders and really showed us Teddy Roosevelt wasn't the only president who liked business competition. The executive order contained 72 different orders. Mostly, he is focused on 4 industries: technology, airlines, agriculture, and railroads. Here are some parts of that executive order. 1, charting a path for states and tribes to safely import drugs from China and urging the FTC to ban arrangements in which name brand drugs makers pay generic companies to stay out of the market. Another part of it is allowing hearing aids to be sold over the counter and cutting down on costs Americans pay to get them from specialists. Forcing airlines to refund fees when baggage is delayed or when in-flight Wi-Fi doesn't work. That would be really cool, because I've been on a lot of flights recently where, I'm in there, they're like, oh, sorry about this, but our Wi-Fi doesn't work. And it's like, but I paid for this nonsense. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. Banning internet service providers from charging high early termination fees, which can run upwards of $200. So, when you sign a contract with like AT&T or any of these companies and they're like, oh, you want to break this contract? You got to pay up to break this contract. So they're trying to bar that. And then barring non-compete clauses in employment contract that make it harder for workers to change jobs. Here's some other ones that I found when I was reading some other documents. Right to repair. Ban cell phone and agriculture manufacturers from dictating who can repair mobile devices and farmers' equipment. Think of Apple. Apple has this whole thing where they're like, in order for you to be able to fix an Apple device, you must be an Apple certified specialist or something like that. And you can't just fix it with any part. It has to be a part directly from Apple. So that's basically like trying to change that up to where it's like, no. Let people be able to change the things that they want to change within their phone. The next one is the White House wants to limit employers' ability to stop their employees from going to rivals, which Biden says would increase worker mobility and wages. Another one that he added in there is he asked regulators like the FTC and FCC to not only block mergers, but also unwind mergers that have already happened. In other words, he's looking at companies, like I said, looking at companies like Apple, Facebook, and he's saying, yo, go back, or mainly Facebook in this one, where it's like, go back and see if we can unwind Instagram from Facebook, WhatsApp from Facebook, or YouTube from Google, or any of these companies that have basically bought their way to become a monopoly by making sure that nobody can compete against them, which is a big thing in tech. In tech, one of the biggest plays that a lot of companies do is when they see any small company that can possibly pose a threat, they're basically just either going to try and kill the company or acquire the company, which is, guess what? Monopolistic. And that's one thing that he's trying to fight against. Biden said the White House goal is to lower prices, to increase wages, and to take another critical step towards an economy that works for everyone. Biden said the White House goal is to lower prices, to increase wages, and to take another critical step towards an economy that works for everybody. Now, none of these orders actually have any real power of their own, but it does give us an idea of the direction that Biden wants things to go. But the even more important thing is it sets the tone of our narrative. And as I like to say, stories are one of the most powerful forces in the universe. If you can tell people stories, people will be able to understand your ideas and move along with it. It's the way that we as human beings relate to other people. It's the way that we as human beings can adjust our lifestyle and change our lifestyle. If people tell us stories, we change ourselves to capitulate to a degree to those stories. And Biden finished off by saying, let me be very clear. Capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's exploitation, which is antithetical. I can't even say that word very well. Antithetical to what one of the largest venture capitalists in the game said, Peter Thiel, who says that, and he's extremely worshipped in Silicon Valley about how he just goes about investing and building businesses. He says competition is for losers, and capitalism and competition are opposites because it limits the fortunes that can be built. So these are the two main sides that are fighting against each other. On one side, you have the government who's like, yo, we need competition. On the other side, you have businesses, large businesses, venture capitalists, and all these kind of things that say, no. Competition is whatever. Like, why would I want to compete when I can just dominate the space and build as much wealth as possible? So here's my take on the whole capitalism versus not capitalism versus whatever. Here are my thoughts. I usually like to say, or I've learned how to say, it's usually not either or, it's usually both. It's usually not either or, it's usually both and. I like the fact that we can build a massive fortune. I'm not going to lie, I'm a massive capitalist. I love the idea of capitalism. I love the fact that you can build major wealth in a capitalist society because there is no cap. There is no limit. You can keep doing well throughout your lifetime. You can just, capitalism is, I like to say, capitalism is the worst of all systems. I mean, it's the worst system except for all the rest. In other words, it's the best thing that we have right now. However, historically, capitalism has led to some of the worst things that we've seen in history. I mean, if we look at just 400 years ago, not even 400 years ago, less than that, we had slavery in the United States. What was the reason that they wanted slavery? Why? Because labor, cheaper labor. Like, capitalism will always find the easiest source of anything and exploit it to the upteenth degree. That's the idea of capitalism. Capitalism is how much possible can I get return on my invested capital? How much money can I make on the back end? If I can eliminate a bunch of things, I can make as much money as possible. Capitalism takes any inch that you give it and exploits it into more than 10,000 miles. They try to go as far as possible to anything, which is why I say that even though I love capitalism, I also see the shortcomings of capitalism, which is one thing that I hate whenever people talk about it. People just put it on one side or the other. It's not that. It's usually both things. And this is where I say, don't hate the player, don't hate the game, but definitely call on the refs to make the right calls, right? Like when you're playing soccer, I don't get mad at a player for fouling me. He's supposed to foul me. I'm looking at the refs to make that call to make sure that, this is a free kick because he fouled me. So I can't hate the game. I can't hit the player. If I'm playing so well that the player has to come foul me, then it's fine, but the ref has to make that call, right? So you can't hit the player or the game. You have to look to the refs, which in this case is the government. We forget a lot of times that there are three players in any game. We have the players themselves, we have the game, and then we have three factors in any game, my bad. We have the players themselves, we have the game itself, and then we have the refs. And usually the refs are supposed to be invisible until they have to make a call. Guess what? You're not supposed to like the refs. You're not supposed to like the government. The government is supposed to be a party pooper because they're supposed to get involved in the game when things are not going the way that they're supposed to be going. So this is my standpoint on this whole thing. My standpoint is pretty simple. Capitalism, I love capitalism. However, we need the government to step in whenever capitalism goes too far. That's just the way it is. Every time we've seen monopolies in all of history, it's always been an abuse of power. There's never been a time in history where we've had a monopoly and everything was just hooker dandy, everything was just nice. No, every single time we have a monopoly, somebody was exploiting the fact that they had a monopoly to make sure that they can make as much profit as possible. Which is why, like I like to say, capitalism is the worst system of them all, except for all the rest. Why? It's the best system that we have currently. But it doesn't mean that we can't improve upon it. But that's just my 2 cents. I know I kind of rambled there for a little bit, but that's just my 2 cents as far as capitalism and the whole argument between, do you want to be a true capitalist or do you want to be a socialist? I'm like, it's neither one of those. It's neither one of those. It's definitely like there's an in-between that we choose not to see because we're a benefit, and which is one of the things. Whenever we benefit from something, it's hard for us to see the other side of that thing because we're like, yo, I'm making all of this. Why would I want to let this thing go? Like he said, capitalism and competition shouldn't go together, right? But anyway, moving on from there. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of the Rambling Mind podcast. If you want more of the Rambling Mind podcast, or if you want to listen to the whole episode that you just heard, go check it out on any podcast listening platform, whether that be Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Breaker, Stitcher. I could go on, but you guys already know which podcast you love to use to listen to. So go check it out. Link down in the description as well. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Peace.